The history of the Dai Nippon Butokukai is an essential subject that cannot be overlooked when examining the development of nearly all modern Japanese martial arts and their relationship with state power. If its history were to be summarized in a single sentence, it could be described as follows. It was both the organization most responsible for reviving traditional martial arts that had been on the verge of extinction by transforming them into modern Budo, and a powerful institution that integrated martial arts into the framework of nationalism and militarism. Although the focus of this video is the Budo Senmon Gakko martial arts vocational school, it is first necessary to briefly explain its parent organization, the Dai Nippon Butokukai. The emergence of the Dai Nippon Butokukai was rooted in the social changes that followed the Meiji Restoration. With the abolition of the samurai class, the implementation of the Haitore, sword abolishment edict, the introduction of universal conscription, and the adoption of Western-style military systems, traditional martial arts such as kenjutsu, jujutsu, and sojutsu rapidly declined. At the time, the prevailing sentiment was that the age of the sword had ended and that martial arts were outdated. As a result, many martial traditions faced the threat of extinction. However, after Japan's victory in the First Sino-Japanese War of 1894-1895, a wave of national celebration swept across the country, and calls for a policy of Fukoku Kyohei, enrich the nation, strengthen the military, grew increasingly influential. The spirit of fighting for the nation and the values associated with Bushido gradually came to be re-evaluated. Within this context, the idea that the spirit of Bushido should be incorporated into national education gained support among government officials and military leaders. As a result, the Dai Nippon Butokukai was established in Kyoto in 1895. A member of the imperial family was appointed as its honorary president, and the organization effectively began its existence as a state-sanctioned authority overseeing martial arts in Japan. The Dai Nippon Butokukai was far more than a simple martial arts association. Its objective was to unify the various martial arts communities throughout the country and to establish martial arts as a component of the national educational system. In Kyoto, the organization constructed the Butokuden on a site traditionally associated with ancient emperors observing martial training. From this headquarters, it organized events such as the Butoku Festival and the Grand Martial Arts demonstrations, established branches throughout Japan, and actively promoted the spread of martial arts. It also devoted considerable effort to training instructors, developing ranking systems, and systematizing martial arts education. Its contributions were substantial. Although the Dan ranking system itself was originally devised by Jigoro Kano for Kodokan Judo, it was the Dai Nippon Butokukai that expanded the system beyond Judo and established it as a nationwide standard across multiple martial arts disciplines. The modern promotion structure of First Dan, Second Dan, Third Dan, and beyond, as well as the broader framework used to recognize a martial artist's skill and experience, spread throughout Japan, largely through the efforts of the Butoku Kai. In 1905, the organization established the Budo Senmon Gakko, commonly known as Busen, the martial arts vocational school. Busen became the largest institution for martial arts education in pre-war Japan and trained large numbers of instructors in kendo, judo, kyudo, naginata, and other disciplines. Many of the teaching methods and instructional systems that support the martial arts world today were strongly influenced by the education provided at Busen. Another major achievement of the Dai Nippon Butokukai was the standardization of competition rules, judging procedures, and ranking systems that had previously differed from one martial arts school to another. During the Edo period, each ryuha, or martial tradition, maintained its own unique methods and regulations, making unified competition and education difficult. By creating common standards, the Butoku Kai laid the foundation for nationwide martial arts such as modern kendo and judo. Furthermore, the Butoku Kai adopted the ideas of Kano Jigoro as a model and positioned martial arts not merely as combat techniques, but as a means of character development. The concept of transforming martial arts from techniques for killing people into a path for cultivating people has continued to influence martial arts education to this day. The organization also established branches throughout Japan and investigated and preserved local martial traditions, helping many traditional schools that were at risk of disappearing survive and be passed on to later generations. However, the history of the Butoku Kai contains not only achievements but also controversies. Although the organization initially emphasized character development, over time it increasingly stressed service and loyalty to the state. The ideal martial artist promoted by the Butoku Kai was not simply someone with superior technical ability, but someone who possessed loyalty to the emperor and the nation and was willing to sacrifice themselves for the state. In other words, being a good martial artist gradually became synonymous with being loyal to the nation. The Butoku Kai also came to wield enormous authority over the martial arts world throughout Japan. It controlled the awarding of titles such as Renshi, Kiyoshi, and Hanshi, thereby determining the social standing and professional recognition of martial artists. Hanshi title holders even received pensions from the organization. As a result, the entire martial arts community became structured around the values and standards established by the Butoku Kai as a centralized authority. Through the organization, the state was able to exercise effective control over the martial arts world. These titles were not awarded solely on the basis of technical skill. Character, personal conduct, and contributions to the organization were also important criteria. Within the Butoku Kai, a body heavily influenced by the state, the concept of character often meant possessing the qualities deemed desirable by the nation and demonstrating contributions to the organization and by extension to the state itself. From the 1930s onward, as Japan moved toward a wartime system, the Butoku Kai strengthened its ties with the military. Martial arts came to be viewed as a means of training citizens and producing strong soldiers, while martial arts education in schools increasingly emphasized mental discipline and military-style training. The standards by which the Butoku Kai evaluated character and achievement became closely linked to loyalty to the nation and contributions to the war effort. As a result, the very criteria by which martial arts were judged acquired a distinctly political dimension. In this respect, the Butoku Kai displayed characteristics commonly associated with centralized authoritarian organizations in modern Japan. Its structure placed the emperor at the top, followed by imperial family members serving as patrons, the Butoku Kai headquarters, regional branches, and finally individual martial artists. During the Edo period, martial arts schools had generally operated as relatively independent entities, but the Butoku Kai promoted nationwide unification and established a centralized administrative system. This brought significant advantages, including standardized educational methods and ranking systems. At the same time, however, it contributed to the decline of diverse martial traditions and local autonomy while concentrating authority in a single organization. Then, in 1945, Japan was defeated in World War II. After the war, the General Headquarters of the Allied Powers, GHQ, determined that the Butoku Kai was not merely a martial arts organization, but an educational institution that had supported militarism and state nationalism. As a result, the Butoku Kai was ordered dissolved in 1946, and the martial arts professional school, Budo Senmon Gakko, commonly known as Busen, was closed. Martial arts themselves were also temporarily prohibited. The reason for the dissolution was not the existence of martial arts techniques themselves, but rather the belief that they had become closely connected to nationalist loyalty and militaristic education. However, even after the dissolution of the Butoku Kai, its legacy remained deeply embedded in modern Japanese martial arts. Much of what is now taken for granted in the martial arts world, including ranking systems, national tournaments, instructor training programs, structured martial arts education, and the social status enjoyed by martial arts practitioners, was developed or standardized through the efforts of the Butoku Kai. It is not uncommon to hear foreign fighters who have competed in Japan remark that Japanese fans treat martial artists with a level of respect rarely seen elsewhere. While this attitude cannot be attributed solely to the Butoku Kai, the culture of showing respect toward martial artists was certainly nurtured during this period and helped shape modern perceptions of the martial arts. At the same time, some of the more frequently criticized aspects of the martial arts community, such as seniority-based hierarchies, an emphasis on rank, and organizational cultures that place great importance on authority and obedience, can also be viewed as legacies inherited from the Butoku Kai era. Ultimately, the history of the Dai Nippon Butokukai is the history of two parallel developments: the modernization of Japanese martial arts and the increasing involvement of the state in their organization and control. To some, it was a great institution that laid the foundations of modern Japanese martial arts. To others, it may be seen as a mechanism for social and ideological control. The Butoku Kai revived many traditional martial arts that were in danger of disappearing, transforming them into modern Budo and helping them develop into a nationwide cultural phenomenon. At the same time, however, it also integrated martial arts into the ideological framework of the state and wartime system, gradually becoming an organization that regarded the cultivation of loyalty as one of its central objectives. Although the organization itself no longer exists, many features of modern Japanese martial arts can still be regarded as part of the Butoku Kai's legacy, including the Dan ranking system, the title and honorific certification system, colored belt classifications, national tournaments and championships, the culture surrounding Budokan-style martial arts halls, the standardization of etiquette and ceremonial practices. In this sense, the influence of the Butoku Kai extends far beyond its own lifetime and continues to shape the practice and culture of Japanese martial arts today. Now, the main subject of this discussion, the history of the martial arts specialized school, commonly known as Busen, Budo Senmon Gakko. Its history is not merely the story of a single educational institution. Rather, it is the history of the highest educational institution established by the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai to unify martial arts throughout Japan and spread its ideals nationwide. It is also the story of the birth, growth, and eventual disappearance of modern Japan's elite martial arts training institution. The establishment of Busen was driven by a serious challenge facing the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai. Founded in 1895, the organization sought to promote martial arts across Japan through a nationwide network of branches. However, achieving this goal required highly qualified instructors capable of teaching martial arts effectively. At the time, each martial arts school maintained its own teaching methods, philosophies, and standards. As a result, it was difficult to provide martial arts education under a consistent framework throughout the country. The Butoku Kai therefore concluded that it needed to train martial arts teachers who understood the organization's ideals and could disseminate them nationwide. Based on this vision, the Martial Arts Teacher Training Institute was established in 1905. This institution would later become the foundation of Busen. In other words, Busen was not created simply as a place for martial arts training. It was established as an institution dedicated to producing martial arts educators who could embody the ideals of the Butoku Kai and spread them throughout Japan. The founding body was, of course, the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai itself. As discussed earlier, the Butoku Kai was far more than a private organization. Members of the imperial family served as its presidents, prefectural governors throughout Japan acted as branch heads, and military officers, bureaucrats, and senior police officials were deeply involved in its activities. Consequently, Busen was not merely an extension of a private academy or local dojo. In practice, it functioned as a national-level institution for martial arts education. After its establishment, Busen developed in several stages. It began in 1905 as the Martial Arts Teacher Training Institute. In 1911, it became the Butoku School, and in 1912 it was reorganized as the Martial Arts Specialized School. Then, in 1919, it adopted the name Busen, Martial Arts Specialized School, and gained recognition as an official higher specialized school under Japan's pre-war educational system. These changes in name were more than simple rebranding. They reflected the Butoku Kai's ambition to transform the institution from a teacher training academy into the nation's premier center of martial arts education. The education provided at Busen was also far broader than what many people imagine when they think of a martial arts school. Practical instruction in disciplines such as kendo and judo formed the core of the curriculum, but students also studied subjects including Japanese language, classical Chinese literature, moral education, pedagogy, and history. This was because Busen's objective was not merely to produce skilled martial artists. Its mission was to cultivate leaders capable of teaching and promoting martial arts within schools and society as a whole. Behind this educational policy was the philosophy promoted by Busen, the Butoku Kai's martial arts specialized school. One of the school's guiding principles stated, "Loyalty to the emperor and love of the nation constitute the essence of martial virtue." In modern terms, this can be understood as, the true nature of martial virtue lies in devotion to the emperor and service to the nation. This phrase captures the unique character of Busen more clearly than anything else. Busen was not merely a school of kendo or judo. Rather, it was an institution dedicated to cultivating character through martial arts and training individuals to serve the state. As a result, Busen graduates enjoyed exceptionally high social status. Upon graduation, they became eligible for secondary school teaching qualifications, opening a formal path into education as martial arts instructors. They also gained advantages in obtaining ranks and titles awarded by the Dai Nippon Butokukai. Furthermore, employment opportunities were available to them through middle schools, teachers' colleges, police organizations, military institutions, and local branches of the Butoku Kai throughout Japan. In the martial arts world of the time, being a Busen graduate carried enormous prestige. Busen developed into the highest educational institution in the Japanese martial arts world. After receiving official recognition from the Ministry of Education as a specialized school, it advanced to the point of awarding the title of Bachelor of Martial Arts. During the Showa period, Busen produced numerous champions of the prestigious imperial martial arts demonstration tournaments and stood at the pinnacle of the Japanese martial arts establishment. Its graduates included not only martial artists but also educators, cultural figures, and politicians. They achieved distinction both within Japan, earning recognition as leading authorities on Japanese martial arts. For those aspiring to become martial arts or physical education teachers, Busen represented an ideal to strive for. Simply being a Busen graduate carried such prestige that alumni were welcomed as instructors throughout the country. The greatest legacy left by Busen was its people. Many of the leading instructors in pre-war kendo, judo, kyudo, and naginata were Busen graduates who spread throughout Japan and helped popularize martial arts nationwide. Much of the instructional methodology, training structure, etiquette, and teacher training systems found in modern martial arts can be traced back to Busen's influence. There is also a popular theory regarding the origin of the dojo greeting, Osu. According to this view, Busen students would shout "Ohayo gozaimasu," good morning, with such force and spirit that the phrase gradually became shortened to Osu. While this explanation remains debated, it is often cited in discussions of martial arts culture. No discussion of Busen's history would be complete without mentioning Nishikubo Hiromichi. Appointed principal in 1919, Nishikubo felt a strong discomfort with the term bujutsu, martial techniques or martial arts techniques. A master swordsman himself, he believed the word emphasized technical skill and combat ability while neglecting the moral and educational dimensions of training. Inspired by the martial philosophy of Kano Jigoro, he argued that the true purpose of martial training should be character development. Consequently, he advocated replacing terms such as kenjutsu with kendo, jujutsu with judo, and kyujutsu with kyudo. More importantly, he proposed using the word Budo as the collective term for all Japanese martial disciplines. The widespread acceptance of the term Budo, now taken for granted around the world, owes much to the efforts of Kanyo, Nishikubo, the Dai Nippon Butokukai, and Busen itself. However, the growth of Busen, the Budo Senmon Gakko or martial arts professional school, did not continue indefinitely. Its demise closely paralleled that of its parent organization, the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai. As the Pacific War entered its final stages, the martial arts philosophy promoted by both the Butoku Kai and Busen became increasingly nationalistic. The ideal martial artist was defined as someone who embodied loyalty to the emperor and love of country, and who was willing to sacrifice himself for the nation if necessary. Over time, being an excellent martial artist became closely associated with demonstrating unwavering loyalty to the state. Within this wartime environment, changes also occurred in Busen's educational system and administration. In 1944, the school's name was changed to the Dai Nippon Budo Senmon Gakko, Greater Japan Martial Arts Professional School, and Kurihara Tamio was appointed chief professor of judo. He was a judoka who graduated from the Budo Senmon Gakko and had even defeated Tatsukuma Ushijima, the teacher of Masahiko Kimura. As Japan's wartime mobilization intensified, the curriculum increasingly emphasized practical and military-oriented training. At the same time, student conscription accelerated, and many Busen students entered military service. One notable example was second lieutenant candidate Hagita Yoshitaka, who enrolled in 1942 and was killed on April 28, 1945, while participating in a special attack mission in the Okinawa theater. In other words, he became one of the so-called kamikaze pilots. An often repeated story among Busen-related accounts is that Hagita carried his judo uniform with him when he departed on his final mission. By the closing months of the war, students who had trained at Busen were themselves directly affected by the conflict. In August 1945, Japan surrendered. After the war, classes resumed for returning students, but on November 6 of the same year, the Ministry of Education issued a directive prohibiting martial arts instruction and extracurricular martial arts activities in schools. In response, the school abolished its martial arts department, reorganized itself around academic subjects such as Japanese literature, and changed its name to Kyoto Bunka Senmon Gakko, Kyoto Literary Professional School. Even so, the school's survival proved difficult. The Ministry of Education imposed strict enrollment requirements for each academic year, and the administration attempted to preserve the institution by encouraging students who had returned to their hometowns to re-enroll. Additional directives were later issued prohibiting martial arts activities on school grounds. These measures were taken because the Allied occupation authorities had prohibited Japanese martial arts. They viewed the martial arts culture of the period with suspicion, particularly the belief that the ideal martial artist was one who embodied absolute loyalty to the emperor and was willing to sacrifice himself for the nation. In the eyes of the occupation authorities, martial arts had become intertwined with militaristic education and wartime ideology. As a side note, during the several years in which Japanese martial arts were effectively suspended under the occupation authorities' ban on Budo, a number of prominent Okinawan karate figures were able to continue training. Among them were the influential karate master Kanken Toyama, his senior student Hiroshi Kinjo, and Kanki Izumikawa of Okinawan Goju-ryu. This became possible because Toyama's Korean student Yun Hui-byung established the Hanmu Kwan Dojo, and served as its director, allowing the group to avoid restrictions imposed by the authorities. In addition to these Okinawan instructors, the dojo's teaching staff included So Ne-chu and Mas Oyama himself, who would later establish Kyokushin Karate, the world's largest full-contact karate organization. After returning to Korea, Yun Hui-byung became the first vice president of the Korea Taekwondo Association in 1959. Furthermore, in 1946, martial arts teaching licenses were invalidated, making it difficult for graduates of the Budo Senmon Gakko, Busen, to continue teaching martial arts in their previous capacities. This was largely because approximately 1,300 individuals associated with the Dai Nippon Butokukai were removed from public office under occupation policies. At the same time, Japan's Ministry of Health and Welfare adopted a policy that permitted certain martial arts activities as forms of recreational physical education. However, subsequent administrative measures separated judo and kendo from formal school education. Kendo, for example, was redefined as a sport known as shinai competition, emphasizing its nature as an individual sporting activity or hobby rather than a traditional martial discipline. In this changing environment, a considerable number of Busen graduates entered the field of bone setting and rehabilitation as licensed judo therapists. In February 1946, the occupation authorities decided to requisition the Butokuden Hall, the historic headquarters of Busen. Having lost its campus, the school continued operating by using facilities at Daigoin Temple in Kyoto, including its Shoin study hall and Kaizando, Founders Hall, as temporary classrooms. During this period, the Ministry of Education proposed a special transfer arrangement, allowing students to move to the Department of Physical Education at the Tokyo Higher Normal School. After considerable discussion among the students, however, this proposal was ultimately rejected. First-year students were instead offered relief through transfer opportunities to the Department of Japanese Literature within the specialized division of Ritsumeikan University. School officials continued searching for ways to preserve the institution, but in October 1946, the Dai Nippon Butokukai itself was dissolved. With the confiscation of the organization's extensive assets, the school's financial foundation disappeared, and its economic situation rapidly deteriorated. In November of the same year, the Ministry of Education issued a formal dissolution order and imposed restrictions on the disposal of school property. During this process, individuals associated with the school reportedly relocated and safeguarded a number of classical martial arts manuscripts, scrolls, and historical documents in an effort to preserve them for future generations. School officials considered various measures, including maintaining the legal entity and transferring the school to another organization, but none of these plans came to fruition. As reports emerged that students enrolled at the Budo Senmon Gakko, Busen, the martial arts specialized school, might also become subject to the post-war purge from public office, steps were taken to ensure that the remaining students could graduate. On January 31, 1947, the graduation ceremony for the 34th class was held at Dainin Temple. This became, in effect, the final graduation ceremony of the martial arts specialized school. Afterward, administrative liquidation proceeded, and inventories of the school's property and library holdings were compiled. Once these procedures were completed, the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai martial arts specialized school officially came to the end of its history as a legal and administrative institution. However, the disappearance of Busen did not mark the end of its influence. Although the school itself ceased to exist, its graduates remained active throughout Japan. When martial arts were revived after the war, many of them became central figures in newly established martial arts organizations. The reconstruction of Japan's martial arts community, including organizations such as the All Japan Kendo Federation and the All Japan Judo Federation, was supported by numerous former Busen graduates. Although no official records exist and the story remains at the level of oral tradition and rumor, it is often said that the martial arts ban, which lasted for several years, was eventually lifted due to the actions of a single martial artist. That man was Kuni Zenya, a master of Kashima Shinryu, a comprehensive martial tradition encompassing swordsmanship, jujutsu, staff techniques, spear techniques, and bato jutsu. Several years after the martial arts ban was imposed, GHQ reportedly arranged a match between a U.S. Marine Corps bayonet instructor and a Japanese martial artist. The contest was viewed as a matter of honor and prestige for Japanese martial arts. Because Marine Corps bayonet instructors were also trained in unarmed combat, the Japanese representative was expected to demonstrate proficiency not only with weapons, but also in hand-to-hand fighting. Faced with this challenge, Sasamori Junzo, a politician who served as a cabinet minister and a martial artist who was the headmaster of Onoha Ito Ryu Kenjutsu, Shinmuso Hayashizaki Ryu Yaijutsu, and Jikigen Ryu Naginata Jutsu, selected Kuni Zenya. Kuni was regarded as an outsider within the Japanese martial arts world due to his repeated participation in inter-school matches and activities resembling dojo challenges, which made him a controversial figure among many martial artists. Armed only with a wooden sword, Kuni faced the Marine Corps instructor wielding a bayonet. As soon as the match began, Kuni read his opponent's intentions, intercepted the attack at its inception, and used his bokken to place the instructor in a position from which he could not move. The feat was said to have been accomplished through an overwhelming difference in skill. Without causing any injury whatsoever, Kuni compelled the Marine instructor to concede defeat. As discussed earlier, GHQ believed that martial arts had been closely associated with the development of Japanese militarism and therefore implemented measures prohibiting martial arts education. In later years, however, a theory emerged that this match demonstrated that martial arts were not fundamentally intended to injure or kill others, and that this demonstration contributed to the eventual lifting of restrictions on martial arts education. Afterward, judo and kendo gradually returned to the school system, but under a very different set of values from those of the pre-war era. Rather than being taught as disciplines intended to foster service to the state, the martial arts were redefined as tools for character development and physical education. This framework remains the foundation of martial arts education in Japan today. The Dai Nippon Butokukai was born amid the national movement for strengthening the country through military and industrial power. As it grew in close alignment with the state, it developed into a vast organization that reorganized and systematized many traditional martial arts that had been in decline, spreading them throughout Japan under the unified concept of Budo. This movement eventually led to the establishment of the Budo Senmon Gakko, martial arts vocational school, an elite institution dedicated to training future martial arts instructors and leaders. During the wartime period, Budo became deeply intertwined with national policy. Following Japan's defeat, these organizations were dissolved, and many feared that the martial arts themselves might disappear. Yet Budo survived. Across the country, instructors and practitioners continued to preserve their traditions, adapting the techniques and spirit handed down through generations into forms suitable for a new post-war era. Through their steady efforts, Budo overcame the threat of extinction and began a new chapter as a path for human development, closer to the ideals originally advocated by Jigoro Kano. Today, Japanese martial arts, including judo, kendo, karate-do, and aikido, are practiced throughout the world, transcending national and cultural boundaries. It is thanks to the efforts of countless individuals who safeguarded these traditions through turbulent times and passed them on to future generations that Budo remains alive today. Although the Dai Nippon Butokukai and the Budo Senmon Gakko have long since passed into history, the systems, educational methods, ideals, and technical traditions they helped establish continue to live on in dojos across the globe. The history of Budo is not merely the history of fighting techniques. It is also the history of people who, amid changing times, continually asked what should be preserved, what should be reformed, and what should be entrusted to future generations. And that story is not confined to the past. As long as a single technique, a single bow, or a single teaching passed down from distant generations continues to be transmitted somewhere in the world today, the history of Budo is still being written at this very moment. No discussion of modern Japanese martial arts history is complete without examining the Dai Nippon Butokukai and the Budo Senmon Gakko. In our podcast, we plan to explore these subjects in even greater detail through a conversational discussion among our staff. If you found this topic interesting, please consider liking the episode and subscribing to the channel.